Welcome to Newsday Studios. I'm Joy Brown, and we're here for a one-on-one conversation with Mike LaPetrie, the Republican candidate in the 3rd Congressional District. Now, we'd wanted to have a debate between Mr. LaPetrie and incumbent Democrat Congressman Tom Suozzi, but Suozzi turned down our invitation, even though we offered several dates for the debate. Welcome, Mr. LaPetrie, and we're very happy to have you here. But before we get to the questions, let's talk a little bit about your background. You're 34 years old. You graduated from Farmingdale High School, SUNY Albany, and you got your law degree from Albany Law School. You're also a former state assembly member. That sound about right?
Sounds about right.
All right, so let's get started with the number one question we've heard the most from Newsday readers and viewers, and it centers on affordability.
One of my biggest concerns is the grocery stores. When we go in, the prices are just way expensive. You buy very little and you just spend so much, and the dollar doesn't get you as far as it did anymore. So how are they planning on combating inflation for not only the middle class but for everyone?
So what can the federal government do? The federal government do to help people specifically at the supermarket?
Joy, I've heard this time and time again. I've spoken to so many residents at the supermarkets or just even knocking on doors, talking to the people, wanting to hear firsthand what matters. And that's exactly it, is that what's hitting our pocketbook, the purchasing power of the dollar just isn't reaching anymore, because what we've seen is inflation rise over the years that have caused us trillions of dollars in excess spending. And additionally, you want to point to grocery stores alone, water, bread, milk, eggs, 40% increase in New York alone over the past 4 years. And people are feeling it. And we want more money in our pockets. That's exactly what I'm looking to do, is not only stop the reckless spending, the wasteful spending, because you and I, we're always budgeting. People at home watching this right now, they're always budgeting, but yet our government isn't. Well, that's not fair. That's not right. And as you said before, I'm born and raised in this district. I came from Farmingdale High School. I recognize I don't come from a political family. I come from a middle-class family, blue collar, that worked hard to get things done. So what we're looking to do is we're going to put more money in their pockets. That means what? That means no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, fixed incomes, making sure every dollar goes towards their lives instead of going back towards the government that's completely wasting it. Making sure we're also pushing for working families, looking out for them, lifting the cap to allow deductions on what? Daycare expenses, childcare, baby formula, baby food, diapers, all that's going. I want to cultivate and encourage families to grow and be created, and also to flock to Long Island, not flee it.
So more money in the pockets to pay for higher prices? How are you going to get the prices down? I think that's what she's asking.
Well, she's asking for multitudes. She wants to have it where she's saying, hey, these prices are going too high because of inflation, and that's because of the wasteful spending on the government side. But then on top of it, I'm looking to put more money in their pockets as well, to make sure as we bring these prices down, we're able to now also have and stimulate this economy by having more money in their pockets.
All right, let's move on then, because the concerns aren't just about the supermarkets. So let's keep it rolling. There's also concerns about housing.
Yeah.
Are they going to ever make it affordable for us to live on Long Island? For our generation of kids, for like my kids, the generations after that.
Okay, let's talk about housing, because that's a big deal. Housing, rents, high rents. What can you do from the federal side to impact housing on Long Island?
Well, let's be clear. I'm the only candidate in this race that has skin in the game for our future. I'm part of the future generations. That's exactly why I wanted to run, is to make sure that we pass the torch from the age of the career politician to that next generation common sense Republican that's going to be out there focusing and having skin in the game to focus on the next not only 5 years, but the next 10, 15, 20 years for our future, where those asking the questions, they can make sure that their children and grandchildren can stay on Long Island and grow on Long Island. Specifically, what I want to do is create regional public-private partnerships that are going to stimulate the housing cycle by creating low-interest, first-time homebuyer loans. And what that will do is stimulate the housing cycle. As these prices are going up with the high interest rates, we need to equalize it. And by bringing down the interest rates for first-time homebuyers and those high prices, it at least equalizes to allow the turnover for the housing cycle.
Well, what about supply? Because that seems to be as big an issue here as well.
Well, it goes into, there's twofold with that, because if you're talking about supply, well, let's look at what we have right now. And there are many people who want to sell, but they just can't find the buyers, because those buyers can't buy because it costs too much. So by us equalizing, you see, if you look on Zillow right now, you'll see where all these sales are occurring, and they're just aching for buyers. Now, buyers the right price, that will the market determine, but allow us, with having a regional public-private partnership, it allows us to at least equalize and make it where it's fair game for the market.
All right, well, let's keep it rolling because we got more on affordability. And that issue is how much of a cap there is on how much of your state and local taxes you can write off on your federal income tax. You hit it before. So this is from Tom from Farmingdale. He writes, the SALT maximum was topped at $10,000 by a vindictive former president. Will you work to restore it to the full amount of our property taxes? What do you got to say for Tom?
So Tom, fellow Dalers, I hear you. I feel your pain. For me, it's a matter of making sure there is no cap. So I want to have it, that cap expires actually next year,
right,
and that will not be restored with Mike LaPetri as your congressman. We want to make sure that they can write off as much as possible to make sure more money are going into these homeowners' pockets. And specifically, what I want to tell the viewers is making sure that we have a Republican conference that's in the majority for the House of Representatives, because we will be the voice for the suburbs. If the Democrats take over in the House of Representatives, then it allows the city to take over. And I want to make sure that we're focusing on these issues that are going to be common sense. They're going to focus on us and make sure the suburbs have a loud voice. And that's why you just saw just a few weeks ago, President Trump came, and he's not going to be endorsing a tax cap any further.
Okay, so not all Democrats, incidentally, come from the city. I mean, your opponent, Tom Suozzi, he's a Dem. And during his time in office, he's made SALT a priority. He's not had success, and he says he's been working with Republicans and Democrats. So what would you do differently in Congress?
Yeah, I mean, he had 7 years to try to make influence, and now it's time we pass the torch to the next generation for us. Specifically on that front, we have to work with both sides, but more importantly is when we're crafting this legislation. Remember, we now have a Republican president, a Republican House that's saying there's no way we're putting this tax cap on there. The Long Island suburbs are going to be having the control, the sway, and the persuasion for this conference. Remember, in 2022, the House of Representatives, the road to the majority, flowed through Long Island.
Right.
So it gave us more clout, more persuasion, and more priority in our messaging, and specifically on governing our policies. So we're going to be pushing that forward as well. And as an assemblyman, I always worked across both aisles with Republicans and Democrats to get things done. Ultimately, what I'm about is making sure if it's an issue that helps my district, I'm for it. If it's an issue that hurts my district, I'm against it. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. It's about being the zealous advocate for the people. That's why they're retaining me. That's why I'm going to be their representative. And that's why they're going to vote for me come November 5th.
All right, well, let's keep going. Long Island's population, you may be young, but the population is growing older. And many are concerned about their benefits. William from Port Washington asks, Social Security is in serious danger of having to reduce coverage in about 10 years. What action should be taken to prevent this from happening? And obviously, it has implications beyond him.
Absolutely. I've actually had meetings with AARP representatives on this front and reassuring them that Social Security is going to be first and foremost a priority for me to protect and make sure it's safe for our future. But twofold. Let's go to the origins of Social Security. Remember, when it was first created, you had 42 workers per beneficiary. Today, as it stands, it's only 3 workers per beneficiary. So what does that mean? We have to create more jobs. We have to create more entrepreneurial spirits. We have to create more industry and competition. Not where we're focusing on monopolies, but more diversity on that front to encourage that growth, to make sure we have more workers that are contributing into this system. More importantly as well, as you know, Social Security is depleted when inflation rises. By having such high inflation over these several years, it's depleted astronomically over these past few years. By us bringing in inflation down and curbing it by having fiscal responsibility and smart spending, that allows us to ensure the lifeblood of Social Security is protected. And I also want to add, too, we have to make sure that we're focusing on financial literacy in our schools for younger generations so that they're not beholden only to Social Security as they get older and rely on just that. I want to create it where there's multiple avenues and flow of wealth creation for younger generations, where it's not only Social Security, but then savings, investments, et cetera.
Here's a topic. It's a really hot button issue for the folks. It's the contamination from the old Grumman site in Bethpage, rather. Earlier this year, 22 barrels containing chemicals were dug out of a public park. There's been widespread health concerns in the area regarding the impact of groundwater contamination. This has been going on now for decades. You've dealt with it when you were in the Assembly.
Yes.
What can the federal government do? What should the federal government do to get this done once and for all?
Water quality is utmost importance. I was the chair of the Republican statewide Water Quality Task Force, focused on proactive solutions to preserve and protect our water quality. And unfortunately, this has been going on for decades under my opponent, who was county executive in Congress, never got it done. Now we got to make sure we have full cleanup. When I was actually an assemblyman, we made sure to contain the plume, but on top of it, I had other plumes in the district that we pushed for full remediation and contain and cleanup of that water source. Specifically here, we have to make sure that we're not only working with the federal side, but then also state side and the local side, working in tandem with our local town of Oyster Bay, with our water districts, to get it fully cleaned up. Enough is enough. We got to have it where action speaks louder than words. We can't keep having just meetings and more meetings and more meetings. I've spoken to so many Bethpage residents that are so concerned about this. Women who have come up to me and said that they have concerns with their bodies when they've had now cancer cases arise, et cetera. And I have others that have just raised concerns about, can we even trust our drinking water? And that's alarming, because I want to make it where people can trust it. But right now there's so many doubts because they're having these repeat problems occur where nothing's actually solved. I want to get in there, hit the ground running, and do what's right to make sure that people have a voice, and we just have no more meetings, just lead by action, clean it up, get it done.
All right, let's move to immigration. The GOP has been calling for a crackdown at the border to halt illegal crossings into the country. At the same time, we know that the fastest growing populations on Long Island are immigrants, particularly Asians and Latinos who came into the country legally or otherwise. Do you support the idea of mass deportations?
I support the idea of mass deportations because I believe that right now we need a reset to focus on legal, merit-based immigration. I want to have it where we're ending the asylum loopholes, where we're going to secure the border by making sure we stop catch and release, and I want to push forward so that we are ultimately focused on making sure that we are putting our priorities first with American citizens, with our veterans, and then making sure that those who are following the law and coming over the border legally, then that's where we get the rewards.
Okay, so what does mass deportation, what does that look like? How does that work?
To me, it looks like where I want to focus right now on the 425,000 career criminals that have now been released all throughout this country.
And who's next? Who's next?
Targeting them first. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of people, Joy. I mean, we have to make sure we go after those. Those are people here that will be working in tandem with federal law enforcement to actually target and make sure we remove to keep our communities safe. When I was a state assemblyman, I actually rode along with ICE, removing people here illegally, one who was wanted for a double murder, another one who was a sex predator who went after 2 children.
I don't think there's.
No,
there seems to be some debate. There seems to be no debate on this part. I'm just trying to figure out mass deportations would imply mass. So what comes after criminals?
Yeah, well, that's going to be our focus first as we roll this out. I think that's the first and foremost importance. And then from there, we'd work with our localities in the states and focus on organic bottom-up solutions rather than just a simple, vague top-down approach. You can't have just a broad brush. You got to make sure we target accordingly. That'll be strategic in that delivery.
Okay. Well, your district reaches into Queens.
Yes.
And your district also has a significant Asian population. What are you hearing from those communities in terms of immigration or other issues?
Yeah, I was talking to a Chinese American who was a business owner. She was actually talking to me. May is her name. She was actually talking to me about how she owns a business and that business was robbed, and she actually ended up getting stabbed in her head. She had to go to the hospital afterwards. So safety is the utmost importance. And the people enjoy the fact when I tell them about my background as a former assemblyman, as an attorney who defended the NYPD, FDNY correctional officers, and as my time as a state legislator where I was the #1 supporter of law enforcement to keep our communities safe during the defund the police movement, while my opponent voted to repeal qualified immunity and betrayed police. That's why I had the support of the DAI, SOA, COBA, Port Authority, SBA, New York City Fire Marshals. They believe in me because they know I'm going to be the guy that stands there, not only with the men and women in blue when times get tough, but then also our law-abiding American citizens who just want to build a business, keep their communities safe, raise a family. Like, that's what matters to them. It's the kitchen table conversations that they know they can trust me to protect.
Yeah, and I think that your opponent would probably say he was endorsed by at least one police union, but let's move on.
He's not here.
Yeah. Let's hear a question that's on the minds of many women in the 3rd Congressional District.
Where do you stand on abortion?
Sweet. How would you vote on a federal ban on abortion?
I'm opposed to any national abortion ban, and I support a woman's right to choose.
Okay, quick answer to a quick question. Following the Supreme Court's ruling on abortion rights, President Biden talked about the idea of expanding the number of justices on the High Court, imposing term limits, and setting up a code of conduct. Do you support any of these changes, or should the court just be left alone?
No, the court should be left alone. We have to retain its sanctity of independence and making sure that it retains what it is and not being adjusted because of politics.
Let's go back to the election then and talk about election results. Thomas from Belrose asks, will you commit to accepting the results of the 2024 election, even if you or your preferred candidate lose? How would you answer Thomas?
100%. Pretty simple.
So you would vote to certify the election?
100%.
So let me ask you this. How important was it for you to see Donald Trump, who you support, campaigning right here on Long Island? We're not a swing state, supposedly.
Well, I think it goes back to what I was telling you, Joy, about the road to the majority runs through Nassau County and Suffolk County. And it was important to show the people that our voice matters. And by having Republican congressmen, not only myself, but Congressman Anthony D'Esposito, Nick LaLota, Andrew Garbarino, by having the four of us be a voice in unity, making sure we could loudly advocate to make sure that SALT tax cap does not come back, and making sure people can deduct, and focusing on the working families, to focusing on our district like the Bethpage Plume, and focusing on the migrant issue, focus on safety. So that's what it showed, and it showed the importance that, hey, we have a loud and proud voice in the president's ear, and we're going to make sure that we focus on us and Long Island, putting Long Island first.
Now, not everyone was happy to see Donald Trump on Long Island. There were protesters. And take a look at what one of our readers sent in. This is from Mary Ann. I'm at a loss to understand how you and the Republican Party can support a presidential candidate who has, over and over, shown himself to be untruthful, dishonest, immoral, and a man who is a criminal. What do you say to Mary Ann and the other people who are out there protesting?
I think the beauty about this country is that we can have differing opinions, differing views, where Mary Ann can speak to me, have that viewpoint, but also get to know who Mike LaPetri is and have a viewpoint of me independently and recognizing who I'm going to be as an advocate for the people as a United States Congressman.
Okay, well, let's go to foreign affairs. The Israel-Hamas war. The conflict has been expanding with Iran firing missiles into Israel. Tens of thousands have already been killed in the fighting. How would you approach ending the violence?
So this is disgraceful that we even have to worry about this in our country, in our state, on this island. Let me be clear that I condemn anti-Semitism and I want to destroy Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Terror Republic of Iran, who funds all of them. I was at the World Summit for Counterterrorism in Israel, where I heard from the heads of the IDF and the Mossad. This was 2 years ago, on my own dime, not during a campaign to gain political points like my opponent. I'm focused on learning about the issues and learning what we need to do to have peace through strength. And specifically, I want to make sure that we're crippling Iran's purse so they cannot fund these disgraceful terrorist organizations, these terror proxies. I want to also have it where U.S. Special Forces will work in tandem with Mossad to develop a plan to go and rescue our American hostages. I saw the Nutra family the day before 10/7. It's disgraceful. People are saying bring them home. It's not bring them home. It's let them go. They're the ones being taken. Let them go. And if they're not going to be let go, then we need to make sure as Americans to devise a plan to go rescue our Americans and bring them home ourselves. Because that's what it takes, is that if we don't have strong leadership, then we need to show that first and foremost. And people are looking towards the congressman to be a vocal representative, a vocal advocate, where they can know Mike LaPetri is going to be there championing for us.
And just to clarify again, you're talking about Omar Nutra of Plainview. He is 22 years old and he's still being held hostage. Let's move on to more and stay with foreign affairs, I should say. Fighting between Ukraine and Russia has been going on now for 2 whole years. The U.S. and its allies have been sending money and weapons to Ukraine. Do you think that aid should continue?
I think that right now we've delivered to them $180 billion to Ukraine over these past 2 years. I think from there we should also look at other ways that we're going to be supporting Ukraine, but not through our own federal dollars. I want to have it where we're actually crippling Russia's purse you've seen Russia now increase trade with not only China and then North Korea and Iran, which has facilitated much of the funding that goes towards going to targeting this war at Ukraine. What I want to do instead is cripple Russia's trade through sanctions, international sanctions, to go after Russia, cripple their purse, and then in addition, making sure as we're in tandem, as a dichotomy, we're also going after Iran through going after crippling them, and then with China as well. So it's more expansive than just simply a binary of Russia and Ukraine, but going after who's helping Russia.
All right, well, let's come home for a minute and focus on gun control. Dory from Albertson asks, what are your feelings about a national ban on assault weapons like AR-15s?
So I think this is such a sensitive topic because what is an assault weapon? We actually don't have a definition of it legally and nationally of what it would be. I think what we need to do is focus instead on illegal firearm crimes, where specifically what I want to do is double the mandatory minimums to make sure gangs and gang violence those criminals are removed off of our streets. I want to also have it where we're targeting those in these specific communities, in the cities, for example, in the urban areas that have high volume of shootings, which are done primarily, 80% approximately, is done by pistols. And those are the most heavily regulated gun. So we need to really target these type of gangs by stepping up enforcement and making sure we're working in tandem localities to understand where these issues are originating from and removing them from the streets to keep our communities safe.
Okay, so you're talking about handguns in urban areas, but the reason that the AR-15s are up and people are talking about it is because the question is timely considering the two recent assassination plots that targeted Donald Trump. In both cases, it was assault-style rifles that were recovered.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, is that people are losing the understanding because you're saying AR-15s, but then assault weapons. So assault weapons ban was the question, but assault weapons, we actually don't have a real definition for
All right,
it.
well, let's make it real narrow.
So
Let's try
right.
So
So if you wanna-
AR-15s, yay or nay?
Yeah, if you focus on AR-15, there's 20 other long guns that are simultaneous, so it's just discriminating upon one gun instead of all of them. So I don't see the logic in that.
So just to clarify one more time.
There's
here.
long guns that are the same thing as AR-15, so I wouldn't.
Well, long
I
gun
wouldn't
is
say-
also a rifle too, so.
Well, there's many different rifles.
Absolutely.
But all of them are related to hunting. All of them are related to private gun ownership.
But the bottom line on this is
The bottom line of this is that there won't be a nation. I will not support a nationwide ban on those type of weapons.
Okay, that's fair. Let's go to the opposite side here and talk about health care coverage and the concerns some voters have about access.
I would ask the congressional candidates, how are you going to balance the accessibility of healthcare to everyone while simultaneously ensuring that the healthcare is at a high standard in the United States? Because there are countries that guarantee healthcare for everyone, and at the same time there's slow rates of getting access to that. But at the same time, how are you going to ensure that people who are disenfranchised or unable to access healthcare are able to do so?
Bottom line here is, how do you ensure people who need health care get health care? Where's the federal government in all of this?
Yeah, actually, I think healthcare as a whole needs a real overhaul, not only on price transparency factors, but also on how people are using healthcare. And I think that we need to change it as a preventative model, as opposed to the current model of what it is. So over time, a phase-in for younger generations in their 20s and 30s that can get quality, affordable healthcare that is serviceable to them and focused on them as a person.
Well, let me ask you this. So where do you stand on the Affordable Health Care Act then?
Well, I think that right now that's what it is, but for us to replace it, you have to come up with a model that I'm stressing right now, that's going to be focused on the next generation. This is something that's not going to be done like that. It's got to be done methodically and focusing on really working with nurses, doctors, physicians, PAs, ground up, organic, bottom up solutions. The beauty is what I want people to know with my representation, it's working in tandem with the communities to come up with viable solutions that are sustainable for long term, not where it's top-down government control, where the congressman's telling you this is what's going to be done. This is my ideas, this is my vision. If you disagree or agree with me, great, but let's mold something that we come to a compromise for a solution for our future that works in tandem with the public, where make sure we get that quality, affordable health care.
Okay, so let me just simplify this again.
Sure.
Affordable Health Care Act, it stays, it goes, you change it?
I like to change it with this model, but I'm not going to just say we have to remove it without coming up with an option to replace it with.
Okay, all right.
That's important.
All right, all right.
You have to give people something to vote for, not just vote against. That's the ultimate position of my campaign, is making sure people want to vote for Mike LaPetri because of my ideas and vision, not just because they don't want to vote for my opponent. It's important that we're giving people choices here where they have to choose. So when I'm saying I want to change this model, change it to what? Well, here's my idea of what.
I want to thank you, Mr. LaPetri, for joining us for this discussion. We've talked about a lot of different things here. And I also want to thank you at home for watching. Newsday reporters are taking a close look at this conversation. To read their story and to get comprehensive coverage of this election, go to newsday.com. I'm Joy Brown.